March 1993, Beverly Hills. The kind of afternoon where the sun hits the sidewalk at just the right angle to make everything look expensive, and the stores along South Wilshire seem to exist in a different atmosphere than the rest of the city. Quieter, cooler, somehow further away from whatever the world is doing. Harrington and Cole had been on this block for 40 years. White marble floors, climate-controlled glass cases, instruments displayed the way museums display paintings, with just enough distance between you and them to make the point. The crown jewel sat dead center in the showroom, a 1921 Steinway Model D concert grand, fully restored, the ebony finish so deep it looked less like lacquer and more like something you could fall into. The price tag read $155,000. There was no rope around it. Richard Calloway made sure no one got close without earning the right first. Richard had managed this floor for 19 years. He kept his desk neat in a way that suggested the neatness was load-bearing, wore a charcoal blazer every day regardless of the weather, and had built a career on sizing up a customer within 5 seconds of them walking through the door. In his own mind, this was efficiency. He'd never spent much time with any other interpretation. The young man polishing the Steinway's legs that afternoon was named Danny Reyes. He was 20 years old and had been at this job for just under 2 years, which meant he'd spent close to 500 mornings alone in this room before anyone else arrived. His father, Hector, had been a jazz pianist. Not famous, not wealthy, but the kind of musician whose playing made people in the middle of a conversation quietly stop talking without knowing why. 18 months ago, a stroke took most of the movement from Hector's right hand. The small studio he'd run out of East Compton closed within a week. The upright piano in the corner of their apartment had gathered dust that nobody in the house had the heart to wipe away. Danny had found this job to keep the bills paid and was saving slowly for a conservatory prep program that cost $26,000. After 2 years of careful saving, he had $2,800. He knew the math. He kept saving anyway. Every morning before the store opened, Danny spent 20 minutes with the Steinway. He'd read everything about the 1921 Model D, the way Steinway voiced the hammers by hand that year, the particular resonance of the original spruce soundboard, the story of this specific instrument touring European concert halls before it passed into private ownership. He knew this piano the way you know a piece of music you've carried so long, it stops feeling like something you learned and starts feeling like something you always knew. At 2:14 in the afternoon, the front door opened. The man who walked in was wearing a black surgical mask, round amber-tinted glasses, and a gray hoodie pulled up despite the warmth outside. He moved quietly, both hands in his front pocket, and paused just inside the door. His eyes found the Steinway and stayed there. Richard gave him the standard assessment. Mask, glasses, hood up, no watch, shoes that had seen better days. He looked back at his invoice. Danny caught the man's eye and nodded the way he did with everyone, without ceremony, without assumption. The man walked slowly toward the Steinway and stopped about 2 feet from it. He tilted his head slightly, the way a person does when they're taking the actual measure of something, rather than just looking at it. Then he reached out one finger and pressed middle C. He waited for the note to decay completely before he lifted his hand. Danny watched without saying anything. There was something in that single touch, the patience of waiting for the full ring to fade, that told him this wasn't someone testing whether they'd get away with it. 1921, the man said quietly, almost to himself. Yeah, Danny said. One of about 40 they made that year for concert use. This one toured Europe for nearly a decade before it went into private hands. The man looked at him. Behind the amber glasses, his expression was unreadable. You know a lot about it, he said. I'm here with it every morning, Danny said. He shrugged, not with apology, just with the plain fact of it. Richard had looked up. He crossed the floor, having already reached his conclusion before he arrived. Can I help you? The words were correct. The tone carried a different message. I'd like to hear the piano played, the man said, and then try it myself if that's possible. This instrument is handled by appointment only, Richard said. For pieces at this level, we conduct a preliminary consultation before any demonstration. Are you actively in the purchasing process right now? It was a sentence that sounded like procedure. It meant, Prove you belong here. I'd just like to play it, the man said. I understand, Richard said, in the way that meant he didn't. That's not how we handle a piece like this. I can put some information together for you to take home. The man was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded once and stepped back. No argument, no frustration. Just the quiet acknowledgement of someone who's been in rooms like this before and knows how they end. What Richard had not once registered in the last 40 minutes was the man sitting against the far wall. He'd come in earlier, asked if he could wait while his driver circled the block. He had a white cane leaning against his knee and dark glasses on, and had been sitting with his head tilted at the particular angle of someone listening to a room rather than watching it. An assistant had brought him water. Nobody had thought about him since. Stevie Wonder had been paying very close attention since the moment the man in the gray hoodie walked through the door. He'd heard the key pressed. The single middle C, the control in it, the patience of waiting for the full decay. He'd heard Danny's voice and recognized what was underneath the plainness of it. He'd heard Richard's version of politeness and understood exactly what lived beneath that too. And when the man stepped back from the piano without another word, Stevie had gone very still. The man turned toward the exit. "Hey," Stevie said, not loudly, just clearly enough that there was no question who he was speaking to. The man stopped. "You touched that key like you already knew the instrument," Stevie said. "Sit down and play it." Richard turned. He recognized who was in that chair. He started to say something about authorization, about the nature of the piece. "It's a piano," Stevie said. The calm in his voice had something underneath it that wasn't calm at all. "Let the man play it." The man in the hoodie stood still for a moment. Then he turned back around. He walked to the bench and sat down. He adjusted once, then rested his hands in his lap for just a beat. Not hesitation, just the breath before. Then he placed them on the keys. What came next was not a demonstration. He began with a single melodic line in the right hand, the left building chord structure underneath it, slow and absolutely deliberate. The Steinway responded the way a great instrument responds to someone who knows how to ask, fully without holding anything back. The sound filled the showroom the way sound fills a space designed for it. Then the tempo lifted, both hands moving together, the melody carrying into territory that felt simultaneously unfamiliar and completely inevitable, the harmonic foundation shifting just often enough to pull you forward. It wasn't any song from any record. It was something built in real time out of whatever was in the room that afternoon, and it was extraordinary. Richard Calloway stood without moving. The invoice he'd been holding was no longer in his hands. He didn't remember setting it down. Danny had stopped polishing. His cloth was flat against his palm, and he was not breathing in any way he was aware of. The music ran for 4 minutes and change. Then it stopped. Not faded, but ended. One final chord given the full length of its sustain before both hands lifted cleanly from the keys. The room held its silence. The man reached up and removed his glasses, then the mask, then pushed the hood back from his head. Richard's face went through several things at once. Confusion, then recognition starting, then recognition landing, and then something that had no clean name. The feeling of understanding, all at once, exactly what the last 20 minutes had cost him. Michael Jackson looked at the piano for a moment. Then he looked at Richard. There was no anger in his expression. There was something quieter than anger, which is a much harder thing to stand in front of. "I'll take it," he said. Richard moved immediately. "Of course, let me get the paperwork." "He makes the sale," Michael said. His eyes had moved to Danny. "I'm sorry?" "The young man who knows this instrument." Michael's voice had the same soft, careful quality it had carried all afternoon. "He should be the one to close it." Richard opened his mouth, closed it. From the chair against the wall, Stevie's voice came one more time. "Richard." He hadn't moved. His hands were folded in his lap. "I've been blind since I was a child. I can't see that young man's face when he talks about this piano, but I can hear it. How many mornings has he been here with this instrument, and you still couldn't tell what was standing right in front of you?" It was not a question. Danny made the sale. His hands moved through the paperwork with a steady tremor he didn't try to hide. When they were nearly finished, Michael set down the pen and looked at him. "Your father, the pianist," he said. "Where is he now?" Danny told him. "The stroke, The closed studio, the chair by the window, the piano in the corner gathering dust. Michael listened without filling any of the pauses. When Danny finished, he said quietly, "What's the name of the program you're saving for?" "Gateway Conservatory," Danny said. "The prep program, $26,000. "Call them Monday," Michael said. "It'll be handled." He stood and looked at the Steinway one last time. "I want the delivery sent somewhere before it comes to me. I want your father to have it first. Give me the address." "You don't have to." "I know," Michael said. He signed the delivery form with Hector Reyes's address in East Compton. Then he put his glasses back on, pulled the hood up, and walked to the door. Stevie was already on his feet, his assistant beside him. As he passed Richard, he slowed just slightly without stopping. "A watch tells you what time someone walked in," he said. "That's all it tells you." The door opened. The door closed. Danny stood alone at the Steinway. The room had gone back to its usual quiet. Climate control humming, faint traffic through the glass. He pressed middle C and let it ring, the same way the man in the gray hoodie had, and he listened to the full length of the note the way his father had taught him. Not for what it was about to do next, but for what it was right now, completely itself. The Steinway arrived in East Compton 3 days later. Hector Reyes opened the door, looked at the piano standing in the hallway, and didn't speak for almost a full minute. Then he sat down on the bench, placed his left hand on the keys, the hand the stroke had spared, and played a single chord. A minor seventh. He let it resolve completely before he lifted his hand. His son stood in the doorway and watched. Some things don't require a word said about them. Some things are already finished. Have you ever walked into a room where someone sized you up in 5 seconds and decided you didn't belong? And then you answered them without saying a single word? Tell me what happened. I'll read every comment.